Hello and welcome to another one of our daily video devotionals that goes along with our sermon series Easter Victory, where we look at the gifts God gives us in His resurrection. Your week 2, day 5, where we continue to look at peace over anxiety. Today we're going to continue unpacking the big theme of our series, which is for us to recognize and appreciate the gifts that God gives us in the resurrection of Jesus right now. Not just one day in the future, for example, at the last day when we're all resurrected, but even now in our life. And to do so, we're going to look at Paul's writings, a particular letter he wrote to the church in Colossae. Now, this letter to the Colossians is the perfect one because Paul writes it with the intent of assuring that the church there has everything that it needs for a relationship with God because it has received Jesus. Now, to our knowledge, Paul had never visited Colossae, but during his third missionary journey, when he was visiting Ephesus, he had a co-worker in the ministry whose name was Epaphras, and Epaphras was from Colossae. And we actually hear that with Paul's support, he goes and plants a church back in his, what we believe is his hometown of Colossae in about 54 AD. And then jumping forward sometime into the future, when Paul is again imprisoned in Rome, probably 61 AD, Epaphras goes to visit him. And while he's there, he shares with him some disturbing things about what is happening now at the church of Colossae. Someone has come along, some false teachers have followed and begun to sow false teaching among the Colossian church, particularly three kind of general areas. One, encouraging them to add Jewish tradition to their current practices, things like circumcision. That they need to have some sort of mysterious experience of God for it to be valid. And then there's some weird talk about something like some sort of harsh treatment of their bodies in order to, I guess, be a real believer. So Paul writes these things to the Colossian church as a corrective to that, to make them understand that, in fact, they have everything they need when they have Jesus. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. Paul's purpose here is to assure the church of Colossae that they have everything they need when they have a relationship with Jesus. That's because Jesus is fully and completely God. In fact, he is the source of all that we experience. He's the source of all creation, whether that's heaven above or earth below. And in fact, there's no power of God that Jesus does not also possess. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. In addition to all power and authority, Jesus has the distinction of being number one. He is top dog, head honcho, the Mac Daddy, as it were, of not just the church, but of all creation. Jesus is literally everything. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. So Jesus is not part God, he's not an extension of God, he's not even just God's favorite. Jesus is God. And as God, he chooses to reconcile himself to all of creation, everything he's created, including you and me. Now this word reconcile, I don't know, should we do another word study? Probably. Yeah, actually, I can't help myself. This word is so cool. Partly because Paul is the only person to use it in the New Testament writings, and he only uses it here and in the book of Ephesians. I wonder what book we should look at tomorrow. Well, anyway, what it literally means is to restore to a state of harmony, and you guessed it, peace. So what Paul is saying to the church in Colossae is, you don't need to add anything else to Jesus. You don't need to add Jewish traditions. You don't need to have a mystical experience of God. You don't even have to subdue your body, whatever that means. You just have to know that God has created and restored the state of harmony and peace with him. And so it's the same for us. We don't have to worry about, are we keeping the rules? Are we doing all the things exactly like we think God wants us to? It doesn't mean we have to have a transcendent prayer life. It doesn't even mean that we have to subdue our body or get rid of those bad habits, is how we might put it. Instead, it's recognizing that God has done everything necessary in his Son Jesus. He has recreated a state of harmony and peace with himself, a peace that he gives to us through the blood of his cross. And in the waters of baptism, he connects us to Jesus and to his resurrection. Alleluia, he is risen.